Hello, everyone. My name is Leah Jones, and I am the Water Justice Organizer here at Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. Welcome to another episode of Environmental Justice Now. Before we get started today, as usual, I like to do a very brief land acknowledgement. While we are on a video call and many of us are joining in from different places, we want to try and remind ourselves that we gather on the unceded land of the indigenous peoples. I'm joining in from so-called Richmond, Virginia, and I am on the land of the Powhatan and Chickahominy peoples. If you are unsure whose land you are on and you would like to find out, you can always visit native-land.ca to find out. So today we have a special episode, one that I think will be quite impactful to reflect upon a proposed project named the Virginia Reliability Project that is set to run through 48 miles of Virginia, expanding an existing pipeline. This area includes some of Virginia's major and most precious watersheds, like the Nansemond River and the Great Dismal Swamp, which both provide necessary resources and livelihoods to many of the indigenous Americans and historic Black waterway communities in those areas. So this is yet another fossil fuel project proposed in Virginia's environmental justice communities, like the many others that we have discussed previously on this show. And mimicking other proposed fossil fuel projects, this one has once again brought to the surface a deeper issue of our decision makers and local community leaders in positions of power not always showing up in the best interests of their communities, but something else. So to have a deeper discussion about what is going on with the Virginia Reliability Project, the possible impacts it could have on the surrounding communities, and the intention of some of our local leaders who vow to support and protect those communities, we have the pleasure of being here with a few activists and community members who are working on the ground to stop this project from happening. So specifically, we have Lynn Godfrey, the Just Transition Program Manager from the Virginia chapter of the Sierra Club. We also have Monica Esparza from the Renewal Trust Project, the Renewal of Life Trust. And we also have Dr. Lafayette Jefferson, community organizer. And we are also here with our director here at VAIPL, Reverend Dr. Faith Harris. So thank you all so much for being here today to join us in conversation. It's a pleasure to have you all. How's everybody doing today?
Doing well.
Doing
well. Thank you, Leah.
Thank you for having us.
Great. So I say we should just dive into it, shall we? Last month, actually, an article was recently published in The Guardian about this Virginia Reliability Project and shed light on many of the inequities surrounding the proposed project that I was just talking about. How did the Guardian article raise concerns about projects like the VRP, the Virginia Reliability Project, impacting Black and Brown communities in Virginia, especially as it relates to leaders in our communities? And anyone can feel free to jump in first.
So I'm happy to jump in just with a statement. I think just to kick us off, I had a very strong reaction to the Guardian article that came out because it revealed a deeper problem related to faith and leadership among some of our communities. One of the most important roles that a faith leader has is their relationship with their members. And so when faith leaders are often in our churches and in our faith communities, they're often compared to kind of an old-fashioned term, but a very important role, particularly in, pre-industrial times, was the role of the shepherd. That was the person who protected the sheep, the flocks, that cared for them, made sure they were protected from, bears and lions and all kinds of other predators coming in and stealing them. But also they made sure that they ate. They made sure that they took them to green pastures and places where they could get good food and have fresh air and all the things that are important to have good, healthy sheep. And the Guardian article suggested a problem with that idea, revealing how TC Energy co-opted some faith leaders and legislators to support their dirty project. And it also revealed the lengths of these oil companies, the lengths that they will go to ensure that they can continue poisoning Black, Brown, Indigenous, and low wealth communities with impunity. And that by them approaching leaders in our communities suggest that they know what they were doing, that they knew that there would be grassroots opposition, and that was their way of attempting to silence and ignore the people who would be most impacted. And so this article just really raised serious concerns for where we are in terms of how our faith leaders and our political leaders understand their role.
Yeah, that's great. It's possible, Leah, would like to piggyback off her Sister Faith's spot on analysis of that. This article was an excellent investigative journalism. It really was by Nina Lakhani. So we like to acknowledge that is the journalist. Her name is Nina Lakhani, and she is at COP27. And she is going to be on one of the webinars to talk about that and about that investigation. But that said, her reporting shed light on how the gas and oil industry manipulate leaders, like Sister Faith said, co-opt leaders of color to lessen the opposition, especially from an EJ perspective. So they're aware of that strength that we have, especially in Virginia. We have a law that's codified into law, EJ law. So we have regulations guiding that, especially in Virginia, which is only a few other states that have that. And, also what it does is the old tried and true divide and conquer tool that's used by, colonialists and neo-colonialists and settler colonialists to divide us. And they use it. Why? Because it works. When we're divided, we're weak and it works. So, yeah, it definitely shed light on that, on how we can be divided so that the powers, the oil and gas company in this case, can acquire what they're attempting to acquire, and that's profits and to build another fossil fuel infrastructure that we just do not need, irrespective of EJ of considerations. We should not be building fossil fuel infrastructure at this point in the climate crisis.
Right. So I guess it's time for me to speak on it. I would say the first thing we have to recognize as organizers is that there is a playbook. The playbook they're using with us is the same exact playbook they used when they were doing the Keystone Pipeline. TC Energy, when they came into Virginia, particularly, I can say the Petersburg area, they actually purchased Columbia Gas, and they didn't let anyone know. And that gives further notification that they are aware of their reputation and what they do. And they'll tell you that, we're some Canadians that are trying to do something, trying to set an image. I was asked to be on their board of advisors, and my first thought was like, they clearly didn't vet me. They clearly didn't vet me. They just wanted bodies. But when you're trying to manipulate a community, you just find bodies. You just find bodies. And when we went to the meeting, the first thing that I saw was that everyone else that was there were Black, male preachers. And I was like, I was like, yeah, I don't know how good they are in this game. But also a part of the playbook is understanding that they want to bypass the citizens and people like us that will actually fight them and challenge them and ask questions, and they will go straight to the legislatures and try to get everything passed as soon as possible, try to bypass all of the regulations like you look on the TC Energy Virginia Reliability Project website, and they'll have all these people. And I can tell you within the meetings when we talked about employment, they were like, "No, we're not going to hire anyone for that." But on each one of these legislators' comments, they were promised that employment was going to happen, and also, and especially, and some people, it actually hurt me to see them up there supporting this project. But I'm also assuming that 9 times out of 10 they didn't receive the right information. And my senator is up here, Senator Morrissey, and it's yeah, he's proud to support it, and I believe that when it comes to him. But we have to recognize the patterns. We have to recognize the patterns, and we have to organize against those patterns. So if they want to go to the legislator, we got to make sure that we have solid relationships with those people. But it's not good. It's not a good project, and we as Black communities need to start moving away from fossil fuel to keep us warm and to cook our food.
Yeah, and I'll just and just say, of course, all of those points are so valid and on point. And the only thing that I would add is, as it's already been articulated, that it's important that we, get the grassroots element. And when I say grassroots, I mean community, people on the ground involved and excited about what's going on. Because as it's been stated, these people come in and they go straight to leadership that they know who have a pattern of agreeing for the benefit of, I'll call them promises. In other words, they make promises to people about jobs specifically, because most of these projects are located in areas of high poverty. And so, people are looking for a way out, even if it's for the compensation to serve on some of these commissions and boards. But we need to make sure that when they say community voices, that people of the community who are most impacted, who not only live but are just mostly impacted, who have been disserviced. I'll say that, who have been disserviced and not a part of the traditional status quo, so to speak. And we need to make sure that we're all accountable to each other. Thank you.
So I wanted to say one more thing, and it was kind of prompted by things that you guys have just said. And I think one of the things is, one of the playbook, one of the plays in the playbook is the promises of jobs, right? So oftentimes those promises come. There's no real data about how these jobs are going to materialize. There's no real, description and definition of the kinds of positions and jobs. And with these new technology, right, related to the fossil fuel industry, the jobs are few and the jobs are highly technical, right? So they're coming to communities where people do not have the training, the skills, the experience necessary to be, to be engineers, right? They're not necessarily going to communities that have those skills resident. And so they know they are not going to be able to make any real permanent changes in terms of jobs and in terms of offering, opportunities for that community. The jobs that do materialize, when and if they ever do, are temporary. They're often labor intensive, cleanup, maybe, delivery, those kinds of things, but they're typically not permanent. They're typically not, highly skilled. So the pay is going to be low. And so the question that I often want to ask these communities, and this is something our faith leaders and our legislators really need to grapple with, and that is, how much is it worth to get a job today, but to sell off and to trade off the health and the wealth of that community for the next several generations, right? So you may get a labor position today that will last you 8 months, 10 months, 18 months for the duration of the project construction. But what are you getting in return for that? You're getting a pipeline, you're getting fossil fuel burning infrastructure that directly poisons your community with air quality, impacts the air quality. It disrupts green space. There are so many negative outcomes from those projects that need to be considered. Like, these are the variables that need to be considered. You're trading off health for tomorrow for some little bit of wealth today. And so that's the question I think that our leaders need to really grapple with before they say yes to joining and signing and participating and taking money from these companies.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you all so much for your insights. Just wow. And I think this, in a way, the VRP is once again just a textbook example of all of the environmental justice, or I guess rather injustices that we see replicated all over the state of Virginia time and time again, which is why we even have this podcast here called Environmental Justice Now, to talk about these things that pop up, like we've always said, like whack-a-mole, revealing once again just this deep-rooted kind of political corruption that exists within our communities, across our decision makers, and even all the way down to the people who may even lead us in worship and our spirituality, and just listening to you all, I think it also makes me just think about something else that maybe our leaders probably should take in consideration, is just honestly what it means to be a leader in itself, and what intention you want to have in that position. And furthermore, I guess I'm just want to tap into just the fact that by, falling into these false narratives of jobs and economic stimulation for communities, while also receiving handouts under the table, not only damages our communities, but it also kind of breaks a vow that was made in stepping into leadership. It breaks the trust that the community has for those leaders in those positions, especially for our elected leaders, in particular, who are making the big decisions for the ways in which our communities are run and facilitated. And then to furthermore get down on the ground level when we know people. I heard you, Dr. Jefferson, say something about it, in some ways it's hurtful. And I think that's very fair, because it's a breaking of trust. Because you do have to trust to follow, and we should be able to trust those who have decided to put themselves in positions of power, because it is a sense of power, but we see it oftentimes being misused in a lot of ways for personal gain, unfortunately. So unfortunately, the VRP is just another example of that. And I think the Guardian article itself was hugely illuminating in what we already knew. It provided what we knew about guesses of things being done under the table, and finding, like Dr. Jefferson said, bodies just to support the project. underhandedly so, even though we know it could be damaging to communities. It put that right at the forefront with the, I guess, data and proof to back it up. And I think, in my opinion, one of the most telling parts and even visuals from the article itself was just seeing the visual campaign of the campaign contributions to Virginia politicians endorsing this pipeline expansion. And I think I can share that really quickly with everyone, just on the screen really quickly, where you can see the amount that TC Energy has been awarding, or I guess granting, to our political leaders here in the state. And it is very interesting that right below the governor is the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. So I think that in itself, this here is telling all alone. And to say that these things aren't connected definitely causes some raised brows, for sure, to say the least. And that's the nice way of putting it, right? So I think a lot of you have already touched on this, sharing about the VRP project, talking about the corruption that we see amongst our leaders. But does anyone want to share more about the VRP project specifically, or even just how you all see this project as an environmental justice issue?
Right. Well, I can tell you in Emporia, they're actually putting a compressor station in there that's run off of electricity. However, the ones that they're proposing, well, the ones that they already have it hooked up. And Petersburg is actually running off of natural gas. And so we're basically going to be doubling the amount of emissions, the emissions going into the community, because the compressor station is in the city. But more importantly, there's a couple things I wanted to talk about that you hit on. All right, we as organizers, we tend to get emotional but we need to start looking at stuff on a more scientific level, and start doing research so we can get hardcore facts. But we need to recognize the factors that make us targets, that make our communities targets. Now, in Petersburg, I can pretty much say we have weak leadership, low unemployment, traditionally marginalized, and that makes us that makes us a target for a lot of industries. And those industries that tend to use those factors of weak leadership, marginalization, health outcomes, the amount of employment, incarceration rates. I mean, there's so many factors. But those industries that typically use those as indicators as to, hey, that's a good place we can relocate, is the industrial companies, landfills, energy companies, and most recently adopted the casino industry. And so if your city or town has those detrimental factors that scream weak leadership, they're going to come visit. They're going to come visit you and try to set up shop. So I think that's something that we need to understand and start working on a way to remediate that, so we can have them go to, well, yeah, we need to remediate that. I'll stop it there.
So I just want to say, before we move on to the VRP proper, I want to say that yes, and even more so, this is a reality that as Black and Brown and Indigenous people we've dealt with for the last over 500-600 years, right? So when you this is part and parcel, and I say this all the time, climate change, climate crisis that we're dealing with right now is the consequences of colonialist expansion around the world, right? coming out of by the church, by the way, and by so-called kings, benevolent kings, right, who were expanding the territory of Christ. So let's not forget that this is not new. This is not something added. This is this is business as usual. It's baked in and embedded into the system. And so what we're doing as environmental justice organizers and creating this thought-provoking, we're trying to create thought-provoking opportunities for faith leaders and for our leaders to recognize how they are being included in this extractive, this way of looking at the world from an extractive lens. And so every one of those industries that you named, including the casinos, are extractive and exploitive industries. And that's what is offered to Black and Brown, Indigenous, and low wealth communities as so-called the problem, the solving of their inequity or their low wealth or their problems. But the problem is that the people are desperate, desperate for opportunity, desperate for investment. And so they see this as, an easy sell. So in some ways we want to be fair and recognize that some people are saying yes and joining and jumping on the bandwagon because they're desperate and they know there's need for investment. It's just that we have on our side, our organizers have a lot more work to do in educating and helping people understand how these are, how all of this works together, and help them parse out and be more critical in their thinking about how their trajectory to wealth, if you will. I'm sorry, Lynn, you wanted to say something. Forgive me.
Yeah, I just wanted to, just emphasize that, this is a gas pipeline, and the jobs, they purport that there would be over 4,000 jobs. And I would tell you, of course, we know that's not true. I mean, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, which was a 303, didn't have that many. But what are the jobs they're trying to intimate where the jobs are coming from? Because there is another injustice that is parallel to this one, and that is the development of mega warehouses. So Hampton Roads now is poised to get 2 mega warehouses, one off the 460 corridor and one off the 17 corridor. And they're fighting here for that. And that's where these pipelines are claiming that they need gas to operate these warehouses. And that's one of the things that they're supporting. The cities are claiming while they're supporting this project. So I just wanted to let people know that. So that is one of the things we're saying. They're going to provide gas to these warehouses, which in turn is going to provide gas, is going to provide employment. The warehouses themselves are problematic. They're another part of polluting the environment, and they're in neighborhoods. There a lot of the two that's going to be built. Not so much EJ issues, are there environmental conservation issues. But so this pipeline is a segmented pipeline. It is not only TC Energy, it's also Williams Transco. And Williams Transco is ironically pumping the gas to the Emporia and Greensville compressor stations from Pennsylvania, which we are ready for that fight down there with MVP, the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So the gas that they're going to be transporting to Greensville is coming from Pennsylvania County. They're going to increase the decatherms per day by 105,000 decatherms, and that's the pressure and speed that the gas is going through. So these, there are injustices there, but the reason why they the weakest link, the reason why they went to the African American community is because EJ, the three overarching or three factors is climate crisis, environmental justice, and necessity for them to get the certification. So the work that you all worked on previously, Faith and other ones, and Monica, to help pass the EJ law. Virginia has an EJ law. They didn't give, I hate to say this, they didn't really give a damn about the community. They wouldn't even approach the community if they didn't have to cross or jump that hurdle. So in Virginia, they have to jump that EJ because it's codified. So that's we need to realize that. So tactically, EJ, morally and socially, and social justice and civil rights, it is a pertinent issue. But the only reason why they did that, because they have to cross that bar in Virginia, and that's the only reason they reached out to the community, because of EJ issues. And there are many EJ issues with this project. Just EJ alone, and they're being attacked also by the owners of the MVP. EQT is attacking them, as well as the gas companies in Maryland and the Delmarva Peninsula. So this is an uphill battle for them. So they have to get EJ right. They have to get those things right. So that's why they reached out to the community, because they know that in Virginia it's a codified law for environmental justice, and they must cross that hurdle. But the project is segmented, is very convoluted project, is not necessary. They're being attacked from all angles. I mean, they're getting a lot of support, but most of the support that they're getting is from industry and from people who's going to profit from, like the warehouse developers, who are going to profit from them building this gas pipeline. So we have this is a project that is coined by activists as the Virginia Ripoff Project. So that's what we call it, Virginia Ripoff Project. So but that's why they it's the old tried and true, the weakest link, the divide and conquer. We've crossed these dots, but environmental justice, this platform, and hopefully others such as Virginia Interfaith Power and Light. One of the things we as a community, African American community, that I'm aware of, we say people of color, but I live in the African American community, and one of the hurdles that we have is our political and leadership is not supporting environmental justice. They're just not supporting it. I mean, we have, and I try to explain that to colleagues, because I don't write them off, because I think some of them are educatable, that we can educate them, but they do need to be educated that this is a civil rights issue, this is a human rights issue, and this is the health of our community. And I'll say this and shut up. The Lancet has a new health platform called Planetary Health. And I will give that to you, Leah, to put in the chat where you can share that and people can look at it. And they just came out with a report just last week that 9 million people in the world die from pollution. Nine because of premature deaths. Well, guess what? 20,000 of those are from Petersburg. Petersburg suffers a 20,000 early death rate annually. So that, right there is just say no more,
Right. Well, Lynn, because I like hearing you speak, a lot of people also don't understand that the gas that they're proposing to pump is fracked gas.
Yeah.
Coming from there. So, Lynn, you can go ahead and speak on that too.
Yeah, fracked gas is coming from, what we call they have different shales, SHALE, and in this region, upper northeast Appalachia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, they have the Marcellus shale, and it's rock. I mean, that's why we call it fossil fuel. It's rock, and they crack the rock and they dig in the rock and they put a slew of pollutants. They don't even share everything they put in there, and they crack it and they extract the gas out of there, methane gas, which is the worst. And then they pump it through, and I mean, I don't know all the engineering of it, but they pump it. It goes through the compressor stations and the operations, and then it's transported. I mean, it's a big. And then the thing is, you can only get so much at a time. So then they kill those after they get as much out. Then they start shelling again and cracking the rocks. So that is frack gas, and most in the United States, as of the 60s. That's when they started doing frack gas, So that's primarily all gas in the United States is frack gas at this point. So
I think I was going to say the other problem with frack gas is not only what you just described, but also what the residue from the water and the chemicals that they
absolutely
force into it to crack the rock. actually you can never use it. That water is never going to be usable again, at least in the, 100 lifetimes or more.
Exactly. Yeah. It contaminates
Poison.
water, so groundwater and most drinking water. And that's another thing with this pipeline is going to have to cross, drinking water sources in
That's right.
Chesapeake and in Suffolk too. I mean, I'm not sure where all of their drinking water come from. So I think some of it does come from the Nasman River.
Yeah. But I just think that we have these so-called engineering feats, right? These great ideas that come from the engineering world, where it's always been mind-boggling to me, the idea of like putting these pipelines under freshwater sources or over them, where there
Exactly.
could actually be a contaminant and really put all of us at risk. And I'm not sure that people understand, which is why we're doing this, so that people can have better understanding of what actually is the threat. That we're not just complaining to be complaining. We're not just people who are, finding fault, fault finders. We're actually talking about protecting our community members, our families, our neighbors, but also, the larger community around us. This has major implications for climate change. Lynn said it earlier, we do not need to we need to stop burning and extracting fossil fuels, period. But we need to move as quickly as possible to renewables, and move away from fossil fuel burning because of the climate crisis that we're experiencing. We have a tornado today in California. I mean, not a tornado, a hurricane today
Hurricane.
in November, like almost the middle of November, which is really very, very unusual. So, and floods all around the world, Nigeria, Pakistan. I mean, epic flooding that people are still trying to recover. That happened a month ago, and people are still trying to recover from them. We have to really move away and helping our legislators. We wrote a letter to the legislator, Black Caucus, we've been trying to work with them for a number of years, as the EJ Collaborative, as Virginia IPL on its own, all of our Sierra Club, all of these organizations have been attempting to be support and, to provide guidance and instruction and help for our legislators to understand why all of them should be environmental champions. We should not have to lobby or advocate to our legislators. They should know this. And they should all be champions for environmental justice. And so we stand ready to do that, and to be that for them.
Right. And one of the things I think we need to touch on is that we know about the severe headaches, asthma problems, leukemia, cardiac, asthma, birth defects, the effects on developing minds and bodies and nervous systems as it pertains to IQ. But the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is that if you gather your evidence and go to court and try to sue those people, they're going to claim plausible deniability because of the other things that are in your community. So if it's fracked gas that's affecting your community, they're going to blame it on the landfill that's around the corner. And the landfill is going to say, nah, it's those people doing that industrial work over there. And in that way, and that's also, one of the ways they get away with putting stuff in our foods, because in order to prove it was their food, you'll probably have to provide a list of everything you've eaten for the last 10 years every day. And so, yeah, in this case, the best course of action that we have to protect our communities is probably not going to come from the court system. It's going to have to come from us preventing these people getting into our communities and getting their little foothold in there in the first place. But yeah, plausible deniability, which is...
That's absolutely a very valid point. And also, as you raise the importance of cumulative impact and cumulative awareness, just, to put a phrase to what it is that you just articulated, because, the community has a sense that, they all kind of have a sense of what's going on, but can't put a finger on it. And, that's just like, but I like the point that you brought up earlier in terms of the need for science and the need for elevated data, but we also have to make sure that our communities elevate their own data. And that doesn't, so we need scientists, right? We need engineers. I was at a recent conversation, and I didn't mean to say this, but I said, we don't need any more development. Right? When you say there's no need for development and there's no need for, fossil fuel technology, people kind of get offended because they've been relying on it so long. So, there's a real need to, as the point has been made, to re-educate people in terms of what is plausible. What's the next step? What's the next strategy? What are economic strategies that we can take? We don't have to rely on these, so-called expert technologists who are, strategists who are, articulating strategies to our detriment.
And see us as expendable.
Exactly. We have to, take that ownership in our own communities. Take ownership, participate more. As I said, voting is just the first step. You have to continue and be civically active in your communities to, to bridge the gap, and to know what industries are there to challenge, because, it's a big smoke screen that we have to, move through, but it is essential.
Definitely. Thank y'all so
Yeah,
much.
outreach, I agree. And let me pick you up. But you know what? We're about to get ready because, I think where this country is moving politically, I think we're going to be forced to do all those things, Monica. And we're definitely going to have to. Voting is just the first thing in our community. Really is not. Civic work is really a lot of hard work. And when we just think voting, once it's voted, that's it. But you see I think Tuesday tell us how far we've come and how far we need to go, in this country with every social issue, including environmental justice. So I think the rubber is getting ready to meet the road.
I hope so. Thanks so much, everyone, for your insights. I feel especially inspired by what you were saying, Monica. Education, empowerment of the people on the ground in the actual communities that we live in. I think that is the key to so much of the issues that we're facing and the injustices that we see ongoing in our state, whether that be with environmental justice on its own or social and racial justice as well, and different issues. There's so many things we could cover, right? But I think there's also, especially with environment, there's this interesting case of just like relationship to environment and just total, disinterest in some ways, but also just a lot of times just purposefully left out of the conversation because Black folks, I guess in particular, didn't realize how much our environment dictates much of our lives, our well-being, our existence, which allowed, like you all have pointed out multiple times in this conversation, just the ability of industry and bigwigs to take advantage of that lack of knowledge to make these communities desperate, to make these communities the weakest link, because they aren't. Black communities, Black and brown communities are not desperate. They're not weak links. It's just a lack of education and empowerment. And that's done purposefully. Knowledge is power. That's the quote. That's a phrase for a reason. And I feel like that's honestly the gap that needs to be filled. And hopefully If a lot of our decision makers, our leaders began to recognize that gap of knowledge that exists and come to terms with it and lead in that education process, become champions themselves, like Faith was mentioning, we can start to combat and really begin to fight these corporations and industries that are coming into communities and damaging and, I guess, in many ways, poisoning us. Like you said, Lynn, Petersburg, I can't remember this percentage specifically, but ridiculous. There's so much of the population.
20,000 people die prematurely.
20,000 people dying prematurely. A lot of it based upon just because of where they live. Ridiculous. What is that saying about how we value our people? And once again, pulling back to the start of our conversation, to our leaders who are ignoring those facts, what does that say about you and how you value your constituents?
Right.
I think I was going to say one more thing, Leah. I think one of the ways that we all need to recognize that we need to start with helping people understand that environmental justice is social justice, right? That they're not separate justices, that environmental justice actually should be the umbrella, the cover for the term for understanding the work that we all have to do, because in order to achieve environmental justice, all those other justices must happen, right? And it gives us a wonderful platform and a place to start with communities to help them understand that, they're not. This is not a side issue. This is the issue, and if we can solve this issue, we solve the other ones as well.
I'm just going to add, we need to also figure out a way, because I was having a conversation last night with some brothers on Facebook, and they were talking about they don't care where their money comes from, is, all they want to do is invest and make money. And one of my mentors was like, he's not investing in anything that takes away from the Black community. He's not investing in anything that's unhealthy for people. But the thing is, those are a lot of the industries where people reap the highest returns on their investments. And so and the reason I bring this up is typically when you start talking about environmental justice, people think it's those poor folk. That's those poor folk, and poor folk don't have no power, don't nobody listen to them, and whatever. But we have to realize the spirit of Ubuntu, it's all of us. It's all of us. It's a big community. And so, I've been thinking all morning, we got to figure out a way to actually get those brothers and sisters that invest in some of these companies to actually speak out if they invest in them, or pull out and divest in them. So I'm going to keep working on that.
Yeah, that's a big lift, and keep working on it, because it's so essential and so important. And I just wanted to raise the point that back to gosh, I forgot. Never mind. That one captured me. I lost my point. I'll get back to it. Thank you.
Well, in the meantime, I will just say that what Lafayette just said was that this is a values issue, right? What do you value, right? Do you value money and profit more than people and your neighbor and your grandmother and your nieces and nephews? I mean, that's the question that has to be asked. And so, which is why faith leaders, what Leah hinted at, this idea of a breach of trust between faith leaders and actually legislative leaders, because in the Black community, legislators have that role as well, right? We see them as champions for our communities. And so having them have that privilege, because it's a privileged role in some ways, they have a responsibility to be accountable to ensuring that they are actually going back to the idea of shepherd, the idea of protecting and caring for and nurturing healthy lives for the people that they serve. That is like, chase bears, TC Energy, and Lions, Transco, all of these people who would come in and destroy and take away the health and wealth of our communities. So I think that's very true. That this is a values issue as well. I'm sorry, Monica.
Thank you. No, thank you so much, Faye. And I did remember the point now. And going back to values issue, and going back to investors, people who don't think that it impacts them. I know that this work that I have done we have done with the environmental justice map, for example, has revealed that it is those people specifically, in other words, the communities that are most cumulatively impacted, and let me raise Hampton Roads as number 2, Richmond number 1, Petersburg number 3, most cumulatively impacted in the community, in the state, are high profile in that way. But most of the time when there is an EJ challenge outside of those areas, it's in some place that you wouldn't expect. It's in some place where the income level is maybe one of the highest in the state. As a matter of fact, I think the industry has been looking at that to get around some of those legalities. And so it's important to everybody, for everybody to come to the table, at this point in the game, because it will eventually likely affect you, not necessarily those people. It involves everybody.
Definitely. Very important. Everybody is coming to the table. I think
I'm glad you remembered that.
It's going to be such a huge feat. It's going to take a lot of prefixes, a lot of re-prefixes. That's the way I think about it. A lot of reinventing, a lot of recreating, a lot of re-understanding as we move forward. Hopefully able to live in a world that I can have children in and have a home in, because I'm only 25. So just to wrap things up quickly, because we are kind of approaching the hour mark. Back to VRP, just want to dip back real quick. Is there anything happening right now on the ground with folks that are fighting back to combat the project? Things happening with others, or just opportunities for others to get involved, more specifically in this fight against the VRP project?
Yes, thanks for asking. There is a coalition. It's a pretty strong coalition. It's growing. We meet every other even Friday. We don't meet this Friday. We'll meet next Friday. Um, um, it's a coalition of several different organizations. VAPIL has a member. Cadets attends those meetings. Sierra Club, CCAN, App Voices. So it's a strong, and what's more importantly is it has strong community voices from the community, from Suffolk specifically, and Chesapeake. And also what is happening, FERC has an open comment period. And that link, I don't know whether you can see that, Leah, I sent you that link. So there's an open comment period for the EIS, and that is the Environmental Impact Statement preparation. And I have the link will have a participation information on it, how the public can participate and send comments to FERC opposing it. And you can just send something as simple as, I oppose this project because of the health impacts it would have, or its close proximity to elementary schools. It's going to cross 2 elementary schools, one in Suffolk, one in I just lost my name. One in Suffolk and one in Chesapeake. So yeah, I mean, so the coalition is going on. We're trying to devise strategies and tactics at the point of decision where we are. Where we are right now is within the FERC regulatory process, and we're trying to with the things that I have read from the opposition, even though we don't support them either, your enemy can glean important information that you can weaponize. So, as I said, they were for some reason EQT, and they delineate the reasons, and then they reference and cite the backup that supports the reason with the Natural Gas Act and NEPA. And so, with the things that I'm reading and, the environmental impacts as well as the necessity, I don't even see how FERC can even give this. But see, we have Manchin, and that's what we're up against too, the political system. They're trying to get, that's how powerful legislators are. Go back to what Faith is talking about, our legislators. They are, they are very powerful. And so Manchin, of course, I guess you will hear it, is trying to get the bill. It's called the Permit Reform Bill, attached to the to the help me out here, the military bill, the military bill that they try to get passed every year.
Right.
Excuse me, I don't know the exact name of it, but the military bill that they're trying to get passed. So he wants to attach this bill to that, because nobody wants to not pass that bill. And there's a name for it, but I'm getting brain freeze right now because I'm not in the legislative sphere. So, but there's a military bill that they try to, get passed every year. And so,
I was going to say it's called the continuing resolution, and it's the bill to fund the government, and military spending is involved in that as well.
Okay,
so it's a must-pass bill.
So, so it's a lot going on. And so even though he's naming the Mountain Valley Pipeline is one of the projects they're trying to push through and get, help. If the bill is passed, it's going to help the other ones get, they'll get passed too. It won't just affect the Mountain Valley Pipeline. So this doc that I put it in there, the link to that is for folks to have a comment to FERC. And then they can go on the site and just make a comment. It's pretty simple, and that's it. But in addition to that, the Sierra Club, as well as other organizations, we're going to be doing an action alert probably within a week. And so it's going to go out statewide. So, and people can comment through that action alert if they wish also.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lynn. I'll be sure to have all the links that you mentioned in the comments for people to check out themselves, along with the Guardian article that we were referencing at the top of our conversation. I think we can begin to just wrap things up. And I just want to say thank you all so much for all of your contributions today and your thoughts and your passion. I can tell everybody we have some good leaders in this fight after all. So I'm grateful for that. And I feel like this conversation is, of course, just the tip of the iceberg in many, many ways. We could be on here for 72 hours straight, still going at it if we really wanted to. Oh, you wanted to say something, Monica?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the invitation and all the work that's going on, and also would like to highlight our next episode of On Current Watch, December the 6th from 12 to 1:30. Look out for a link. Hopefully, we'll be able to share a link as well to continue this pipeline discussion. Thank you.
Awesome.
Wow. Yeah, and I just want to wrap up also with just saying thank you to all of our guests today. We're really grateful for the work that you do every day. We know that this is your lifeblood. You're not in this because you're benefiting. You're in this because you care, because you're committed. You're one of the converted, as I call them, people who recognize the critical nature of connecting our environment with our daily lives. And so many of us forget that, but the environment is what sustains our lives. And if we don't protect it, and if we don't care for it, it can't care for us. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your hard work. And thank you, Leah, for having us all on today for this extended conversation.
Oh, yes, of course. I'm so grateful. Super impactful, like I was thinking it would be. So once again, we'll be back again next week for another episode of Environmental Justice Now. And as usual, if you want to keep up to date with VIPL, you can join us by being a supporter, by going to this link right here and signing up to be our supporters list, and hopefully also keeping up to date with everything that's going on with the VRP. And all of the other lists of injustices that we were mentioning today on this call. So thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.